Cyber Valley is the most underrated card in Edison format. It came out in Phantom Darkness, released in 2008, and at that time people utilized the card in Dimension Fusion Turbo decks with Dark Magician of Chaos. Fast forward 2 years and we're in March 2010 in Edison format. A much more slow-paced environment compared to years prior, where you can realistically use all 3 of Cyber Valley's effects at one point in the game. Coupling it with Return and DDR, you can allow for explosive plays. Pairing it with take cards like Mind Control and Brain Control allows you to remove your opponent's monsters and get a pot of greed in return. You're about to learn about the Valley Theory, the future of Edison format. So, why is Cyber Valley such a good card in Edison format? You may be thinking to yourself, well, why should I include this in my deck? Or which decks can you include this card in? So let's start with the basics. If you go first and you go turn 1, you just normal summon Cyber Valley and perhaps you set a back row, right? The back row can be anything. You don't really need to protect your life points in this scenario because that's what Cyber Valley is doing. You just need it to be able to stick on the board. If you want to trade off other monsters in your hand, perhaps you were clogged on normal summons and you want to get out of the early game and you just want to see more cards in your deck, then you can use this as a draw 2. Or if you don't really care about the Cyber Valley, you can just let them attack over it. You don't need to bottomless their first normal summon or prison it or mirror force it. You can just let them run it over, go effect, banish, draw a card, end the battle phase. And now you fueled up your banish zone for cards like Return, Dimensional Alchemist, DDR. So you've already kind of gotten out of the early game. You've made a lot of cards in your deck live and you've drawn another card and your opponent is now committed to the board. So now you can clear what they're doing. Let's say they summoned a Bora and attacked just because they don't want you to summon another monster, banish both and draw 2. So they might feel inclined to push through this when they otherwise might have just set some back rows and passed, had you not normally summoned the Cyber Valley. So by forcing your opponent to start playing the game, rather than being in a stalemate where no one really wants to commit into your opponent's cards, this puts your opponent in a weird position where they kind of feel inclined to attack. So what outs do they really have? The answers to Cyber Valley coming from these aforementioned decks might be something like Brain Control or Mind Control. They can take your Cyber Valley, banish their own monster and draw 2. Most people don't main Mind Control because it's not good against everything and you need to pair it with something usually like a tuner or maybe your own Valley to be able to get advantage off of it. You can't tribute it, so you can't even use it for Substitute, for example. But most people do main the Brain Control, right? So they have one card in their deck that they can punish you with, for example. Well, to do this, they need to also sacrifice their normal summon and banish that monster. For example, if your Blackwing opponent has a Bora and a Blizzard, maybe they don't want to banish their Bora so their Blizzard is dead. Perhaps they wouldn't even activate the Brain Control there. Or another scenario where they have no monsters and just don't want to leave themselves open, or they don't want to waste the Brain Control so early. Maybe they want to hold your Brain Control so they can use it on your boss monsters later, like a Christia, for example, so they don't outright lose to it. We've established there isn't really any good outs turn 1 to a Cyber Valley other than attacking, which is exactly what you want them to do, or just they're passing and then you can normal summon something and banish both and draw 2. What are the upsides? Well, with Cyber Valley, it makes your own Mind Control and Brain Control much more potent, because you're able to take their monster, banish it and draw 2. When you use Brain Control or Mind Control, taking a boss monster and banish it with Valley, it's way better than them taking your Valley and wasting their own monster. So it makes these cards much better early game. That's a bonus. If you're able to pair it with something like a Dandelion, a Tragodia, a Gorse, any way for you to get free monsters, perhaps your opponent attacked and you summoned a Trag. You went battle phase, swing over their monster, they're thinking, great, I don't need to prison a Trag, I can deal with this in my own turn. I can Brain Control it and then I can change the level and synchro with it. But then you end up banishing with Cyber Valley main phase 2 and you're left with no monsters. So you're able to attack over their monster and then you drew 2 in main phase 2 and you fueled up your banish zone. That's pretty good. With Gorse, you can freely use the token, or Gorse if the token is bigger than Gorse, and drawing 2 cards. And of course with Dandelion, if you're able to play this in your Amaryllis deck, for example, it's incredibly strong being able to banish a token that you got absolutely for free, drawing 2 new cards. Let's touch more on Cyber Valley buying you more turns. So for something like Gold Sarcophagus or Future Fusion, where you're forced to wait, particularly when you go Gold Sarc into Future Fusion, having to wait 4 turns to get the payoff, and Future Fusion usually forcing you to wait another turn if you send something like the dragons, because you have to go to the end phase. Well, something like Cyber Valley is great here. You can go normal summon Cyber Valley, getting you deeper into the deck so you can see Gold Sarc or Future Fusion way faster. This is the bomb in the dragon deck, so of course you want to see this as early as possible. And buying another turn with the Cyber Valley, forcing them to commit into it when you activate the Gold Sarc, because they can't really do any damage for the Valley. The issue with Gold Sarc is if you go Gold Sarc turn 1, for example, and they understand that, oh, I'm on a clock, I do want to kill him before he gets to his Future Fusion, they might be more inclined to go to the battle phase and push with a lot of monsters. Well, if you have a Valley on the board, they have to deal with the Valley first. So they basically have to waste a turn attacking over this, dealing you no damage. Or if they want to make a Brio or Dark Arm Dragon to remove this, they're playing into something like your trap cards. Another thing I want to touch on with Gold Sarcophagus is that not only are you able to search Future Fusion, you can also search bombs like Dark Arm Dragon, Chaos Sorcerer. Cyber Valley also being a light monster, when there isn't a great deal of light monsters that you can splash into every deck, that's good. We don't have something like Effective Veil or an Edison format that you can just put into a deck, and if you draw it, oh good, it's a hand trap. Or if you mill it, good, it's a light monster. No, Cyber Valley is one of those where, yeah, it does get banished if you use the effect, but if you just mill this or discard it off of something like a Bryanak, you can easily get a light monster engraved to make Chaos Sorcerer alive. Now, this mainly comes up if you play millers like Card Troopers, so you're actually able to get the Valley into the graveyard easily. What about in the later turns of the game? Cyber Valley is of course a very good early game, being able to get you deeper into your deck the first few turns. But when you get to maybe turn 3, 4, 5, how good is this card really? Well, I think it's mainly good as a starter. Being able to use it on the first couple turns to get you out of the early game is its main draw point. Or something else like a Brain Control on the top of your deck, and drawing it with Upstart Goblin in the same turn. It gives you a lot of third effect with Upstart Goblin. Banishing a card from your hand, putting one of these bombs, flexibility with the card, even though it's a pretty costly play. If it wins you the game, it wins you the game. That's all you need to worry about. Also, other cards that synchronize well with this card, even later game, is 1-for-1 Return from the Different Dimension and something like DDR, mainly being played in the Amaryllis deck, along with Dandelion. Being able to get it back from the Banish Zone with any of these cards, then you can use it multiple times. You can return back your big board for a push, and if you're not able to kill them, you can draw 2 cards or see other options to be able to break the board that way. DDR being of course a little faster, but a little more costly and less powerful, albeit still being a good way to get Cyber Valley from the Banish Zone, or another monster that you banished with it to reuse its effect, like a Red Eyes Darkness Metal Dragon, for example. And 1-for-1, of course, being able to tutor this from your deck turn 1 or at any point in the game, really. Now, every card has some downsides, of course. Even something like Trap Dust Chute has, albeit minor, some issues with it. Of course, still one of the best cards in the format, but you shouldn't expect a card to be flawless every single time you see it and there not being a single bad thing about it. There are some bad qualities with Valley. Of course, it's not the best card if you head into a board with a Bryanak or a Dark Arm Dragon or Chaos Sorcerer, for example, because they can just remove it. And if your deck is particularly weak to something like Deck Devastation Virus, this is another card that can get hit by DDV, which is, of course, something to take into consideration. Another downside with this card is it has some conflictions with the draw traps, be it Reckless Greed or Legacy of Yadagarasu, and any reactive extender, really. Even something like Return. Valley drawing your Return is obviously good because Return becomes better, but Return is also a trap that's kind of slow, so if you're in a bad position, seeing any of these trap cards off of Valley is not very good, of course. So perhaps you don't want to play these kind of cards with Cyber Valley. Okay, well, you can still play a Dry Engine in the form of Upstart Goblin. Not only do you have the synergy of being able to stack one of the bombs on the top of your deck with Cyber Valley's effect by banishing him and a card from your hand to put this on top of your deck and draw it with Upstart. You also don't have the confliction of, either drawing Upstart off of Valley or Valley off of Upstart and it being bad. Something that is the case with the aforementioned draw traps, as you don't want to draw a slow trap card that's a reactive extender from your Cyber Valley. But yeah, that's my discussion on Cyber Valley. It is by far my favorite tech card in Edison at the moment. I'm very impressed with this card. If you enjoy my content, make sure to also subscribe to my second channel, linked in the description box down below.